Story 3, The Girl in the Closet, Missoula, Montana. I never believed in ghosts, not until I stayed in that cabin. In December 2019, I booked a last-minute weekend getaway through a rental app just outside Missoula, Montana, near Patee Canyon. I needed to get away from city noise and deadlines, just a peaceful place in the snow. The listing looked perfect: rustic, one-bedroom cabin, wood-burning stove, and total privacy. The host left a key in a tin by the porch and a welcome note on the kitchen table. But something felt off the moment I stepped in. The air was heavy, thick, like the place hadn't breathed in years. I noticed the bedroom closet door was sealed shut with a rusted chain and a handwritten tag, "Do not open." Property of Caroline. I assumed it was some weird antique thing or the host's attempt at rustic charm. Still, it gave me chills. The first night was uneventful, just cold winds outside, the crackle of the stove, and the creak of old logs shifting in the frost. But at 3:04 a.m., I woke to the unmistakable sound of a child crying, soft, stifled, and coming from the bedroom closet. I froze under the covers, heart pounding. There were no kids, no neighbors, just forest and snow. I convinced myself it was an animal, maybe something under the floor. But the next night the crying returned, louder, closer, and when I opened my eyes, I saw the closet door trembling as though something inside was pressing against it gently. I shouted, "Who's there?" and the noise stopped. Dead silence. I left the lights on and didn't sleep. The next morning I checked the rental listing again. It was gone, removed from the site entirely. I called the number on the note, but it was disconnected. On the third night, things turned. At exactly 3:04 a.m., the chain on the closet snapped loud enough to wake me. I turned to see the door slowly creaking open on its own. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but the screen was frozen, just a black screen and a single word flickering: Caroline. Then I saw her. A girl, maybe 7 or 8, wearing a dirty nightgown, standing inside the closet. Her face was wrong, blurred, like something smeared in a dream. She stepped forward and whispered, "Are you going to leave me here again?" I screamed and ran into the snow, barefoot, didn't stop until I reached the nearest road. A ranger found me 2 hours later, shaking and bleeding from frostbite. When I described the cabin, he got real quiet. He said there used to be a hunting cabin out there, burned down in 1989. They found a man inside, no signs of fire, just frozen solid, holding a doll. I never found the rental again, never got my things back. But every year since, on December 13th, I get a voicemail from an unknown number. It's always a girl crying. Always at 3:04 a.m. Story 4, The Whisper Through the Vents, Columbus, Ohio. Some homes have bones that remember. In early 2023, I took on a house-sitting gig for an old professor of mine in Columbus, Ohio. He was spending a month overseas and needed someone to look after his Victorian home in the German Village district. The place was beautiful, but creaky high ceilings, crown molding, and long narrow hallways that never seemed fully lit. He left a binder of instructions on the table: feed the cat, take in the mail, lock the basement door at night. That last part felt oddly specific, but I didn't think much of it. The first few nights were quiet, but on the fourth, something changed. Around 2:50 a.m., I was brushing my teeth when I heard a voice, faint, coming from the vent behind the bathroom mirror. It was a whisper, rhythmic and male, speaking words I couldn't quite make out. I turned off the faucet and leaned in. It stopped. I assumed it was sound from another house echoing through old pipes. But then it happened again the next night, this time at 3:00 a.m. Sharp. A whisper that grew louder if I tried to ignore it. The cat Oscar would hiss at the vents and refuse to enter certain rooms. I emailed my professor about it. He replied hours later with only this: do not respond. It's harmless unless you speak back. That chilled me to the bone. I avoided the vents after that, but one night while lying in bed, the whisper came back, this time from the heating grate below me. It said my name 3 times. Slow, clear. Then, "Are you listening now?" The room went ice cold. The light flickered. The cat bolted under the bed and wouldn't come out for hours. I stuffed towels into the vents and played music to drown it out, but the whisper found its way through. Always around 3:00 a.m., always soft and always closer. Then one night it said something different. He left me down there. I knew what it meant, the basement. I'd never opened that door since arriving. That night, something in me broke. I grabbed a flashlight and unlocked the basement door, stepping down into the darkness. The air grew thick with mildew and dust, and the smell of candle wax filled my lungs. At the bottom, I found a door built into the wall covered in heavy iron mesh. On it, scratched in shaky lines, was the word "listen." I pressed my ear to it and heard crying. Not a voice, not a whisper. A deep, guttural sob from someone who'd been there far too long. I ran upstairs, locked everything, and stayed awake until sunrise. I moved out the next day, breaking the agreement. My professor never replied to my final message, but sometimes I think I still hear it through hotel vents, through my apartment radiator. Always at 3:00 a.m., always asking, "Are you listening now?" Zern Story 1, The Light in the Crawl Space, Denton, Texas. It started with a flicker, just a light glowing beneath the floorboards at 3:21 a.m. And by the time I realized what it was too late to ignore. I was house-sitting for my cousin Marcy in Denton, Texas, in a little brick ranch home just off University Drive while she went on a cruise. The house was old, built in the 1950s with warped wood floors and a low square-shaped crawl space beneath the living room she always joked about sealing off because it smelled like a grave. I wasn't too concerned. I liked quiet, and being alone gave me time to finish writing a grant application for grad school. My second night in, I noticed something strange. The light in the hallway dimmed slightly every time I walked into the living room, like something was draining the power. I checked the fuse box. Everything looked normal. Around 3 a.m., I sat on the couch with my laptop when I saw it, a pale blue glow seeping from between the cracks in the floor, like a flashlight had been turned on beneath the boards. I froze. There was no one else there, no reason for light to be coming from beneath the house. I knelt down, heart thumping, and pressed my ear to the floor. At first I heard nothing. Then a shuffle followed by something that sounded like whispering. I jumped back. I convinced myself it was a busted motion light or something electrical. But the next night it returned. Same time, same place. Only this time the boards beneath the couch began to creak downward like someone was pressing their weight up from below. I backed away, and suddenly there was a sharp knock from the crawl space vent on the outside wall. 3 precise taps. I grabbed my phone and called my cousin. She didn't answer. I left a message. The third night, I opened the crawl space hatch in the yard just after midnight. My flashlight barely pierced the dust and cobwebs, but what I saw made my skin crawl. Red candles burnt out and sitting in a triangle. Charcoal markings on the wood beams, and a broken mirror facing upward. Someone had been down there recently. There were fresh footprints in the dirt, barefoot and small like a child's. I called the police. They checked it out and found nothing, no one. But they took photos and one of the officers muttered, "Looks like a binding ritual. Haven't seen that since college." That night I tried to sleep with the lights on, but at 3:21 a.m. the power went out completely. No lightning, no wind, just silence and darkness. Then came the noise, scraping like nails against wood right beneath my bed. I didn't move, couldn't. Then from under the floor a voice whispered, "Let me in." The light returned brighter this time, filling the whole room from below, and something knocked from beneath my mattress, slow and steady. I bolted, drove to a hotel, and never went back. Marcy moved 6 months later. The new owner sealed the crawl space with concrete. But I still have the voicemail I left her that night, my voice shaking as I said, "There's something living under your floor." Story 2. The Shadow on the Balcony, Savannah, Georgia. Not every shadow comes from something living. In the spring of 2021, I was renting a short-term apartment in Savannah while working remotely. It was a charming second-story unit above an antique store on Jones Street, one of those narrow oak-lined roads with gas lamps that look beautiful by day and terrifying by night. The balcony overlooked a quiet brick courtyard, and the place came fully furnished, Southern Gothic with creaky wooden furniture and oil portraits of solemn-looking people I assumed were long-dead strangers. The owner told me it had character and made a weird joke about the balcony always having company. I didn't laugh. My first week there was peaceful. I loved the quiet. But one night while working late around 2:40 a.m., I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, something shifting across the French doors that led to the balcony. At first I thought it was a raccoon or maybe a drunk passerby, but when I looked directly there was nothing until I turned off the lamp to go to bed. That's when I saw it. A tall figure standing just beyond the glass, motionless, facing me. I rushed over and flung the doors open. No one, just the rustle of mossy trees and the distant sound of a ship horn on the river. I convinced myself it was a reflection, a trick of the light, but over the next few nights it got worse. The shadow would appear at almost the exact same time every night, always just standing there, never moving, never making a sound. I left the doors locked and tried to ignore it, but one night it wasn't outside. I woke up around 3:15 a.m. with the air freezing cold and the distinct feeling that someone was in the room with me. The French doors were still closed, but I could see the silhouette now inside the apartment, standing in the corner near the portrait of the old woman. The only light came from the hallway, and it barely illuminated the shape, but I could make out its face or lack of one. Just a black void like its head absorbed light. I screamed and flicked on every light I could, and when I looked again, it was gone. I emailed the property owner, and she responded hours later with a cryptic line, "Oh no. You opened the door, didn't you?" She explained that years ago the building had been a Civil War hospice. A young Confederate soldier was said to have died on that balcony, left there overnight when they ran out of beds. He froze to death in the rain. Since then, the previous tenant, a woman named Carla, reported seeing a man who waits on the balcony. She had moved out after claiming the spirit followed her into her dreams. I left that apartment a week early. The owner refunded my last few days without argument. But some nights I still dream of him standing on my balcony even though I don't have one.